There is a quiet truth about life that many people learn too late. Not every battle is meant to be fought, and not every person is meant to stay. Energy is the foundation of everything you experience in life, yet most people give it away without awareness. It is not just physical strength, but your emotional state, your mental clarity, and your inner peace. Every thought you think, every interaction you have, and every environment you step into either strengthens this energy or slowly drains it. The problem is, energy loss is often silent. It does not announce itself loudly. Instead, it shows up as fatigue without reason, irritation without cause, or a constant sense of heaviness you cannot explain. When you spend time around certain people, notice how your body responds. There are those who leave you feeling lighter, calmer, and more focused. Then there are those who leave you feeling exhausted, tense, and unsettled. This is not accidental. Human beings exchange energy through words, tone, behavior, and even presence. A toxic person does not need to harm you physically to affect you deeply. Their negativity, their complaints, and their constant emotional demands slowly consume your inner resources. The danger is not just in being surrounded with such energy, but in absorbing it. Over time, you begin to mirror what surrounds you. If you are constantly exposed to criticism, you start doubting yourself. If you are surrounded by negativity, you begin expecting the worst. Your mind adapts to the environment you tolerate. This is why protecting your energy is not a luxury. It is a necessity for your well-being and growth. Many people believe they must always be available, always understanding, always sacrificing. They confuse kindness with self-neglect. But when you continuously give without restoring yourself, you become empty. And an empty mind is more vulnerable to stress, anxiety, and emotional instability. Protecting your energy means becoming aware of where it goes and making conscious decisions about who and what deserves access to it. It also requires discipline. Not every conversation needs your attention. Not every argument deserves your response. Not every person earns your time. Learning to step back is not weakness. It is control. Silence can protect your energy more than words ever could. Distance can restore what constant exposure has taken from you. Your environment plays a powerful role as well. The spaces you spend time in, the content you consume, and the people you interact with all shape your internal state. If your surroundings are filled with tension, noise, and negativity, your mind will reflect that chaos. When you begin to choose calm environments, meaningful conversations, and supportive connections, your energy starts to stabilize and strengthen. There is also a responsibility you hold towards yourself. No one else can fully protect your energy if you do not value it first. When you ignore your limits, tolerate disrespect, or stay in draining situations for too long, you teach others how to treat you. Awareness is the first step, but action is what creates change. Sometimes this means saying no when it is uncomfortable. Sometimes it means walking away even when you feel attached. Energy, once lost, takes time to rebuild. And the more you allow it to be drained, the harder it becomes to regain your balance. This is why awareness must turn into practice. You begin to observe more, react less, and choose wisely where your attention flows. Because where your energy goes, your life follows. Recognizing toxic patterns early requires a level of awareness that most people avoid, not because it is difficult to see, but because it is uncomfortable to accept. In the beginning, harmful behavior rarely appears in its full intensity. It often hides behind charm, familiarity, or even care. A person may seem supportive one moment and subtly critical the next. These small inconsistencies are easy to ignore, especially when emotions are involved. But patterns do not lie. What repeats itself reveals itself. One of the earliest signs is persistent negativity. This is not the occasional bad day or honest frustration that every human experiences. It is a consistent outlook where problems are magnified, solutions are dismissed, and hope is quietly rejected. Conversations with such a person often revolve around complaints, blame, or dissatisfaction. At first, you may try to help, to offer advice, or to bring a more balanced perspective. But over time, you begin to notice that nothing changes. The negativity is not situational, it is habitual. Another pattern is manipulation, and it often operates in subtle ways. It is not always direct control or obvious deception. Sometimes it appears as guilt, as emotional pressure, or as carefully chosen words that make you question your own thoughts. You may find yourself over-explaining, apologizing frequently, or feeling responsible for their emotions. This creates confusion because you start doubting your own judgment. Instead of feeling secure in your perspective, you begin to seek their approval, even when something feels wrong internally. Disrespect for boundaries is another early indicator. When you express a limit, whether it is your time, your space, or your emotional capacity, a toxic person does not accept it easily. They may ignore it, challenge it, or make you feel guilty for having it in the first place. You might hear phrases that shift responsibility back onto you, making it seem like your needs are unreasonable. Over time, this erodes your confidence in setting boundaries, and you begin allowing more than you are comfortable with. There is also a pattern of inconsistencies that creates emotional instability. One moment, they are kind and attentive. The next, they are distant or dismissive. This unpredictability keeps you engaged, constantly trying to understand what changed and how to return to the good version of them. It becomes a cycle where you invest more energy trying to maintain balance while they remain unchanged. Early recognition also comes from observing how you feel after interactions. Your emotions are signals, not weaknesses. If you frequently feel drained, anxious, or unsettled after spending time with someone. This is information. It is your inner awareness trying to communicate what your mind may be ignoring. Many people override these signals, convincing themselves that they are overreacting or being too sensitive. There is also a tendency for toxic individuals to avoid accountability. When something goes wrong, responsibility is shifted elsewhere. Excuses are repeated, and the same situations occur again and again. This repetition is important to notice. Growth requires reflection and change, and when neither is present, the pattern remains. Recognizing these behaviors early is not about labeling others or creating conflict. It is about observing without denial. When you become more aware of these patterns, you begin to see beyond words and focus on actions. What a person consistently does carries more truth than what they promise or say in isolated moments. Boundaries are the invisible lines that define where you end and others begin. Yet many people live without clearly understanding or protecting them. They are not walls meant to isolate you from the world, but guidelines that protect your time, your emotions, and your sense of self. When boundaries are weak or undefined, it becomes easy for others to step into your space, take more than they should, and leave you feeling overwhelmed without fully understanding why. A toxic person often reveals themselves through their reaction to your limits. It is not just what they do, but how they respond when you say no. A healthy individual may not always agree, but they will respect your decision. A toxic individual, however, sees your boundary as an obstacle. They may question it, push against it, or try to make you feel guilty for having it. This pressure can be subtle, disguised as concern, humor, or persistence, but its purpose is the same: to make you abandon your limit. At first, the violation of boundaries may seem small, a request that feels slightly uncomfortable, a conversation that goes further than you intended, or a demand on your time when you needed rest. You may ignore these moments to avoid conflict or to maintain harmony, but every time you ignore your discomfort, you send a message, not just to them, but to yourself. You begin to teach yourself that your needs are secondary, that your limits are flexible, and that your comfort can be sacrificed. Over time, this pattern grows. What was once a small intrusion becomes a consistent expectation. The more you allow, the more is taken. This is not always because the other person is consciously planning to take advantage, but because you have not reinforced where the line exists. Without clarity, people will operate based on what is permitted, not what is fair. There is also an internal struggle that comes with setting boundaries. Many people associate boundaries with rejection or fear that they will be seen as rude, selfish, or distant. This fear creates hesitation. You may soften your words, delay your response, or agree to things you do not truly want. But boundaries are not acts of aggression, they are acts of self-respect. They communicate clearly what you are willing to accept and what you are not. A toxic person often resists this clarity because it limits their control. They may try to shift the conversation, making it about their feelings rather than your needs. They may remind you of what they have done for you, creating a sense of obligation, or they may simply ignore your boundary altogether, acting as if it was never expressed. Each of these responses is a signal, not of misunderstanding, but of disregard. Consistency is what gives boundaries their strength. It is not enough to express a limit once and then abandon it when it becomes uncomfortable to maintain. Each time you reinforce your boundary, you build trust within yourself. You begin to feel more grounded, more certain, and less affected by external pressure. This does not eliminate resistance from others, but it changes how much that resistance influences you. Your time, your energy, and your emotional space are limited resources. When boundaries are not respected, these resources are slowly depleted. You may find yourself feeling resentful, not because you are being treated unfairly in one moment, but because the pattern has continued for too long. That resentment is often a delayed response to boundaries that were never fully protected. Learning to recognize when your limits are being tested requires attention to both actions and reactions. It is not only about what others ask of you, but how they behave when you choose yourself. Energy drain is not always loud or dramatic. Often it is subtle, repetitive, and easy to justify until it becomes a constant state of exhaustion. You may not notice it in a single interaction, but over time it accumulates. It shows itself in the way your body feels after certain conversations, in the heaviness you carry without a clear reason, and in the lack of motivation that slowly replaces your usual clarity. This is not just tiredness from activity, but a deeper depletion that affects your mind and emotions. When you are around someone who drains your energy, there is often an imbalance. You give attention, patience, and emotional support, but receive very little in return. The conversation revolves around their problems, their needs, and their perspective. You listen, you try to help, and you invest your presence. Yet when it is your turn, the space is no longer there. This imbalance may not be openly acknowledged, but your body feels it. There is a quiet tension, a sense that something is being taken without being restored. This type of drain also comes from constant emotional intensity. A toxic person may bring urgency into every situation, making small issues feel overwhelming. You are pulled into their stress, their frustration, and their reactions. Even when the situation does not directly involve you, you carry its weight. Over time, this repeated exposure keeps your mind in a state of alertness, as if you are always preparing for the next problem. This prevents true rest. Even when you are physically still, there is also the effect of unpredictability. When someone's behavior changes frequently, you begin to adjust yourself to maintain stability. You think more about what to say, how to respond, and how to avoid conflict. This constant adjustment requires energy. You are no longer acting naturally, you are managing the interaction. This mental effort, repeated over time, becomes exhausting. Another layer of energy drain comes from internal conflict. Part of you may recognize that something is not right, while another part tries to justify it. You tell yourself they are going through a difficult time, that things will improve, or that you should be more understanding. This inner dialogue consumes energy because you are not at peace with your own experience. Instead of clarity, there is confusion. Instead of certainty, there is doubt. Your body often recognizes this drain before your mind accepts it. You may feel tension in your shoulders, a lack of focus, or a desire to withdraw without knowing exactly why. These are not random reactions. They are signals that your system is overwhelmed. Ignoring these signals does not make them disappear. It only delays your awareness of the impact. When energy is consistently drained, it begins to affect other areas of your life. Your productivity decreases, your patience shortens, and your ability to enjoy simple moments fades. Things that once felt easy begin to feel like effort. This is because your internal resources are being used to manage an environment that is not supportive. Rest alone does not restore this kind of exhaustion. You can sleep, take breaks, or spend time alone. But if the source of the drain remains, the cycle continues. True restoration requires awareness of what is taking your energy and a willingness to reduce its influence. This may mean creating distance, limiting interaction, or changing how much of yourself you give in certain situations. Constant drama rarely appears as something harmful in the beginning. It often feels like urgency, importance, compos, or emotional depth. You may believe you are simply supporting someone through difficult situations or being present when it matters. But over time, a pattern begins to reveal itself. The chaos does not come and go. It stays. Just when one issue ends, another begins. There is always something wrong, something unresolved, something demanding immediate attention. A person who lives in constant drama creates an environment where calm feels unfamiliar. Their conversations are filled with conflict, tension, and exaggerated problems. Small situations are turned into major crises, and ordinary challenges are presented as overwhelming burdens. You may find yourself repeatedly pulled into these situations, not because you are directly involved, but because they make you feel responsible for helping, fixing, or simply listening. At first, you may respond with empathy. You give your time, your focus, and your emotional support. You try to understand, to advise, and to bring a sense of stability. But instead of resolution, the same patterns return. The details may change, the people involved may be different, but the intensity remains. This repetition is what defines the pattern. It is not about occasional hardship. It is about a continuous cycle of disturbance. There is also a subtle pull that keeps you engaged. Drama creates emotional highs and lows, which can feel intense and even meaningful. You may feel needed, important, or deeply connected during these moments. But this connection is not built on peace or mutual growth. It is sustained by instability. When there is no drama, there may be silence or distance, which can feel uncomfortable after becoming used to constant activity. A toxic person often positions themselves at the center of every situation. They are either the victim, the hero, or the one most affected. This keeps the focus on them and ensures that the flow of attention continues. If you begin to step back or reduce your involvement, they may intensify the situation or introduce new problems to draw you back in. This is not always a conscious act, but it becomes a consistent behavior. Being around constant drama requires energy, not just in listening, but in processing the emotional weight of each situation. You begin to carry stories, conflicts, and concerns that are not yours. Your mind stays occupied, even when you are alone. You replay conversations, think about possible solutions, and anticipate what might happen next. This mental involvement keeps you connected to the chaos, even in moments of physical distance. Over time, your sense of normal begins to shift. What once felt overwhelming may start to feel expected. You adapt to the instability, adjusting your reactions and lowering your need for calm. This adaptation can make it harder to recognize how much it is affecting you. You may tell yourself that this is just how things are, or that some people simply live this way. There is also a loss of clarity that comes with constant drama. When everything feels urgent, it becomes difficult to distinguish what truly matters. Your attention is divided, your focus is scattered, and your ability to remain grounded is weakened. Instead of moving forward in your own life, you become entangled in situations that do not contribute to your growth. The presence of continuous chaos does not allow space for stillness, reflection, or genuine peace. It keeps your mind occupied and your emotions engaged, leaving little room for balance. And now you see it more clearly. Not every presence in your life is meant to nurture you. Some are there to test you, to awaken you, to teach you what you must no longer tolerate. The signs were always there, in how you felt, in what you ignored, in the silence you kept. But awareness changes everything. You are not responsible for fixing every person. You are not required to carry what was never yours. And you do not need to explain your decision to protect your peace. There is strength in stepping back. There is power in choosing distance. And there is freedom in letting go of what drains you. When you begin to protect your energy, something shifts within you. Your mind becomes clearer. Your emotions become lighter. Your life begins to move with intention, not reaction. you stop chasing chaos and start choosing peace. This is where your real power lies, not in controlling others, but in mastering what you allow into your life. So be still, observe deeply, and choose wisely, because the moment you stop entertaining what harms you is the moment your life begins to heal.